Hey, what's up? My name's Vit, and in this video, we are going to be talking about parsing in Final Fantasy XIV. Um, we've got a lot of new people who are here for the first time, either in this expansion or new to raiding in this current raid tier that we've got going on. And I feel like this is just an important video to make to, just casually talk about some of this stuff and maybe help some newer raiders understand what goes into parsing, logs, how to improve your parses, how to do more damage in raids, and just how to improve at raiding generally. Because that's really what all of what parsing is, how well did you do in the raid compared to other people who have cleared, right? Parsing is basically just high score, right? In my opinion, it's like playing pinball. It's a tale as old as time when it comes to video games. Can I go in? Can I beat my high score? Can I beat other people's high scores? Translated to Final Fantasy XIV, it's in terms of how much damage you did throughout the raid, based on your DPS numbers. Super simple stuff. This is a team game, so it gets a little bit more complicated than that. There's a bit of team coordination involved, but that's really the extent of it. It's just a high score type of thing. Your fights get uploaded to this website, fflogs.com, and you get thrown up on this unofficial leaderboard where you can see how you compare to everybody else who has cleared specifically on the job that you're playing. All the ranks are based on each job. You can see how you stand overall, damage wise compared to other jobs as well. But, all of the ranking is done per job, which is cool. And you can see here on the left, all of the different colored numbers here that basically denotates, my standings on the leaderboard. These are all different clears of M1S specifically. So I can see here, pink, orange, purple, blue, green, gray. It's basically just the percentile on the leaderboard that you fall into. Gray being bad, pink being good. Pink is like the top 1%, 99 percentile. Orange is like that top 5th percentile. Purple, the top quartile kind of. Blue, kind of somewhere in the middle, average-ish. And then green is like below average, and then gray is like the lower quartile. So the colored number basically is just relative to where you fall on that leaderboard for your job. Pretty straightforward. It's a super simple system. It tells you just where you are against basically everybody worldwide who has cleared that fight. These numbers are all at the time of clear. So like this 99 is no longer a 99 because other people have since beaten that score. This was like a month ago that I got this. And if you can see here, it's like a 97 today. So you've got the historic percentile and then the today's percentile. So, it was a 99. It's gotten beaten a bunch by a bunch of people, and now it's down to a 97. Same with some of these others. This 97's down to a 50, for example. Like, this was like week 2 or something, right? So there's a lot more to it, but it's basically just a leaderboard based on your damage. That's pretty much the long and short of it. Like I said, this is an unofficial leaderboard, and it does require third-party tools to record and upload these fights, which are technically against Square Enix's terms of service. They don't really like you doing that, but I'm not recommending or condoning that you use any of those third-party tools. I used to do all this stuff back when I played on PlayStation. I was on PS4 on my couch. And I would always just rely on other people to upload those logs. And nine times out of 10, if you're in Party Finder, if you're in a static, doing extreme, doing savage, ultimate, any of that content, like 9 times out of 10, somebody else will be uploading these logs, and you can just go look at them. You just have to go to fflogs.com, search your character name, and you're sure to find some clears that you've done, hopefully the most recent ones that you're interested in. Sometimes, it takes people a little while to upload those logs, but check back the next day and they're likely to be there. Sometimes you run into the rare occasions where nobody was logging the fight, but I don't know. It's very common that somebody else in your party will be uploading this stuff for you. So you don't have to break TOS. You don't have to install any third-party programs. You can just come here and look at the website. I know a lot of people who are not super into raiding at a high-end level get a little weirded out about this. A lot of like casual players are like, oh, I don't want, my information out there in the public. If you personally have a problem with your stuff getting uploaded, super easy. You do have to make an account on FFLogs and link your character. They basically just give you a code that you put on your lodestone page, on your character page, and you can link your accounts. And you're able to hide your rankings if you feel so inclined. I don't think it's a big deal if, people with bad parses are a dime a dozen in this game, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's really just, somebody who hasn't practiced as much, somebody who hasn't played as much, you got things to improve, but everybody has to start somewhere, right? So we were all there. We were all parsing gray at one point. I don't think it's something you need to be afraid of or stress out about. Yeah, I don't know. That becomes a bit of an issue if you're trying to find a static, but the logs a lot of the time from what I've seen are pretty telling. Like if you're parsing gray consistently, you have some work to do. You just got to improve a bit, right? And if you're trying to find a static, if you're worried about not getting into a group because of that, you're just going to be looking for a casual static at that point, right? With a bunch of other new raiders. That's just how it is, right? You'll be looking for a group of people who you can practice and grow with, as opposed to a bunch of people who really know what they're doing and are going to carry you to victory, right? That's just not how it works, unfortunately. But, if you're doing PF, we get people every week who are not playing super well, and it is what it is. It's Party Finder. So I don't know. You get some people in PF who are weird about it, who will leave parties if, they'll check logs and maybe leave if they don't like what they see, but who cares? All the good players will be able to, help you get those clears. And, that's not something I ever take a look at when I'm in PF. I don't check people's logs ever. I don't care. We're just going to jump in there, and if you know how to do the mechanics, we'll probably clear at least this raid tier. If DPS checks are a little bit tougher, then, it might be something that starts to matter a little bit more. But as things stand currently, I don't know. I'm not worried about it whatsoever. I don't think you should be either. Yeah, logs are just, in my opinion, a tool to look at and, analyze and use to improve your own gameplay and, look at what you might be missing. Like if you're consistently getting grays and greens, we'll get into that shortly here about how to improve your parses. But, it just typically means that you're missing something, whether that's gear, whether that's rotation, whether that's, uptime, whatever it is. We'll talk about all that stuff. But, it's really just a tool that you can use to improve your own gameplay, your own rating abilities. And really just, it's satisfying to see week after week, slight improvements as you get geared, as you learn your job, you learn the fights, you get more consistent, and you can really just track that improvement. It's a really fun system. I mean, if you look at my parses in date order here, you'll see they're kind of all over the place. Sometimes you just have bad runs. Sometimes you get murdered. Sometimes you play other jobs that you don't have geared, like I'm doing here a lot recently. And it's just all over the place, right? But I don't know. It's fun to see how you did, in my opinion, because 14 does a horrible job with this. It has no real feedback to how well you're playing. So parsing is such an integral part of endgame rating these days, where the game does not provide this information out of the box. So we really just need a way to analyze how we're playing. And this is it at the end of the day. I really don't have a whole lot of experience parsing. I've got a bunch of recorded clears here, but when it comes to actually joining parse parties, That's something we'll talk about a little later as well, but that's kind of a different thing that I'm not really talking about in this video a whole lot. This is more for people who are new to this. If you are, a hardcore parser in this game, if you grind out those high ranks, this video is really not for you. You'll probably know all of this stuff. You'll probably know more than I do. I've joined a few parties. I got knocked out this 99 within like 3 pulls in one party. Maybe I got lucky or not, but again, that's no longer a 99. It's been knocked down. I think I joined one party for M2S. I joined a party for EX1. We knocked that one out pretty quick. That was like a rank 7 at the time, so that was pretty good. I know not a lot of people parse the extremes these days, but some people do. And, it's fun jumping in there. But, I've been looking at these logs forever now, throughout all of Endwalker and now into Dawntrail. This is something I've been at least looking at and analyzing and trying to improve for my own personal benefit with. And I think it's been really useful. So we're going to share some of the stuff that I've noticed throughout my journey with this game, with endgame rating, and some stuff that could maybe help you improve your damage and help you improve your parses in general. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about here that's drastically going to have the biggest impact on your parses is gearing. Parsing isn't really a thing until you are best in slot. Because the way that the rankings work, you're competing against people who have best in slot. So if you do not, you will never perform as well as they do, and you will never be ranked as highly as they are. It's just physically not possible based on the way the damage in this game works. You can crit all your abilities, you can play perfectly, but if you don't have that raid weapon, you are not going to do as much damage as somebody who does. So that's the first step. Let's take a look at my M1S clears again, and I can actually show this, like how this affects things. So like I'm pretty consistent on most jobs. Like, my Dragoon clears are typically purple, just in random PF groups, whatever. Usually pretty good unless something drastically goes wrong, like this most recent one. I think I died to like the spreads after the knockback or something, whatever it was. And like I'm pretty consistent on a lot of jobs, but like here's one on Ninja, for example. This is probably my second main and a job that I play or have played a ton. I haven't played a lot of it this expansion, but like not much has changed. So like it's a job I'm super comfortable on. But I jumped in last week and cleared the whole raid tier on Ninja for the first time. Probably not playing perfectly, but pretty solid. Like I didn't feel like I was making any real mistakes along the way. Maybe like really minor stuff here and there. Maybe like slightly overcapping gauge once in a while, something like that. Like, nothing horrible. But, I still got like a 47, a green, right? And that's because I don't have gear. I have a good amount now. But like I was using the extreme weapon, I was missing some tome gear. I had a good amount of the raid pieces that I needed at this point, but like I just didn't have that weapon. I was missing a bunch of other stuff, but like if you look, like my uptime is 99.58%. Like if I like actually went in and analyzed this, like it would be pretty good. Like the damage profile looks pretty much perfect. The kill time was not great, whatever. I know I'm talking about some more detailed stuff that we'll get into in a second here, but I just want to stress the importance of having gear. Like just because I don't have that raid weapon, because I'm missing some other tome pieces, whatever else that I was missing, I think I was probably like item level 722, I want to say, for this clear, somewhere around there. But again, I'm competing against people who are fully best in slot. So even if I play super well, really solidly, it's just never going to be at the same level of people with gear who are playing well, right? So doing like 47, basically average, more or less, that's still pretty good for not having gear, in my opinion. But like seeing a green there is not surprising because I'm just missing that gear. Same thing goes for like these healer clears, right? I don't have gear on my healers. My Astro actually has the raid weapon, but my Sage definitely did not. So if we take a look at this Astro clear, like I felt like I played really well this time. I know Astro needs, the entire party playing well to parse well. But I was again probably like item level 720 here or something. And I've got 99.6% uptime. Like I'm casting constantly. I'm doing a bunch of damage. If we look at the healing parse, I didn't even heal much. I had like very few GCD heals. The Sage was just carrying the healing, and I didn't really need to heal a lot. Not much I could do more than I already was. I was using all my cooldowns, but healer parsing's a bit weird. But again, this just goes to show, like, I felt like I played really well, and I only got a 54, right? And that's just because I don't have gear. I don't think this party had a whole lot of gear either. But, gearing really does make a big difference. If you are not geared, just keep in mind that you are competing against people who do have gear. Same thing for like this Bard clear. Like I know I didn't play perfectly by any means, but I had like no gear for this one. These machinist clears have like no gear on them. I think I might have died on this one. That's really bad, but these greens are like I felt like I played well, but just the lack of gear, not having a weapon, it really does make a huge difference. So that's like the number one thing to look at. Like if you're wondering why you're stuck getting grays, getting greens, getting blues, whatever it is, the first thing you need to be looking at is, am I best in slot? Do I have full 730 gear and the raid weapon? And if the answer is no, then that's, a pretty big part of it, honestly. Like I know for a fact this ninja clear would probably be at least a purple if I was fully geared, right? It wasn't perfect, but like it was on par with like many of my Dragoon clears at least. So it can be that big of a difference that would take you from like a green to a purple or like a blue to a purple or whatever it might be, depending on how much gear you're missing, of course. But like if I look at some of my oldest clears where like this was the day one clear for M1S, like as soon as the raid tier came out, we cleared this with all crafted gear. So it was like, I think I had one tome piece at that point from like the first week of tomes that you could buy something. And I got a 79 that day, right? Like that's pretty good. But if you look at today's ranking, it's a 35. So the point being, like, if you were to go into M1S today in like full crafted gear, if you played perfectly, if you had a really good group, like you'd have a hard time doing better than a 35, right? Like, of course I could have done a little bit better, I'm sure. But, if you're getting a 35 in crafted gear today, like that's pretty solid. Like the gearing just skews it so much, right? So if I played identically to how I did on day one in the same gear, I'd get a 35. It's like, okay. And then you look at this one, which was week 2. I got lucky week 1 and got a raid weapon. So week 2, I came back in and got a 97 because I was competing against a bunch of other people who didn't have a raid weapon. And, that 97 from week 2 today is a 50. So it's like, okay, the gearing really just does skew it a lot. So you've got to kind of look at the more recent clears and see like, okay, this one from a week ago, I got an 87, which is fine, right? Like this was just in like a casual PF re-clear. This was actually a pretty solid group, but these are all just random PF groups. Sorry to anybody if I'm pulling your name up here, but it is what it is. It's just PF. This stuff gets uploaded. It's all public. But, yeah, I don't know. The gearing just has such a big impact, but beyond that, if you're geared, you're still struggling. If you've got a reasonable amount of gear, like as I've shown here, if you're like item level 720 or so, you should still be able to get greens. You should still be able to get some blues if, you're doing really well. Maybe even some purples if you're, very well geared, just missing a few couple things. The next thing that you really want to be looking at is your uptime. So if I go into, we touched on this briefly, like, let me look at this 99 that I got, right? Again, it's been bumped down to a 97 since, but The next thing you want to be looking at is uptime. And this is the most important thing. Uptime is this column right here under active. This is basically the percent of the fight that you were active for, that your GCD was rolling. So if I was able to keep my GCD rolling for 98.12% of the fight, this is actually not that great. And that is because I actually ended up LBing at the end, and that counts for downtime. Like my GCD stops rolling basically when the LB is going off, when you're stuck in that animation lock. But you want to be looking at this for yourself, right? If your uptime is not like 98% or above, then, you know, that's a lot of damage that you're leaving on the table. Ideally, it's like 99.5%. If you're playing super well, if you're not dropping any GCDs. Let me look at this Sage Clear. I know this one's a little lower on my part. I don't know what I'm doing on healer. This is just like a for fun job for me. But I got like a 93% uptime. This fight was a little bit chaotic. I think we had a bunch of deaths in here. So I was having to res, I was having to run around and like dodge people blowing up all over the place. So I wasn't able to keep full uptime. But like, if you think about this, if I only had 93% uptime, we'll ignore the decimals. Let's just say 93%. That's like 7% of the fight that I was not hitting the boss. So if I'm able to make up that 7% or, you know, close to it, 6% to get to 99%, whatever it is, that's like 6% extra damage that I'm missing out on, right? That's a huge amount. That's like a full-on party buff for the entire duration of the fight, just by trying to tighten up my uptime and, you know, keep hitting the boss more consistently. That's a huge amount of damage. Like if I was able to do 7% more damage on top of this, that would take me from a green to who knows where, right? I don't know the exact numbers, where healer parses are. I haven't cleared enough on healer to have a good idea of what that's like. But, you know, this white mage who died a couple times, to be fair, no fault of their own, I'm sure. This party was a bit messy, but they had like a 77%. That's, you know, doing horrible things for their parse. Not to mention when you die, you're laying on the ground, not doing anything. So dying is obviously the number one thing that you want to fix. But outside of that, getting that uptime, like my 93% here, like I'm leaving a lot of damage on the table with that. When you compare that to like that Astro parse that I was looking at before, that Astro parse, I think I have something much better. Yeah, 99.6%. So like I don't have much room for improvement there. Healer parses get a little bit weird because, you know, you got to be healing as well. And every time you GCD heal is somewhere that you might potentially be able to be casting damage spells instead. You don't want to get too greedy with that if you're not in a dedicated parse party. But yeah, it's a balancing act when it comes to healers. But the uptime, I don't think the uptime matters if you're casting heals or damage. It's all the same. But again, just watch your uptime, check that. If you feel like you're struggling and your uptime is not, you know, 98 to 99%, that's something that you should be looking at and figuring out how to improve. That's like the first thing, because if you're not hitting the boss, it doesn't matter how good your rotation is, you're not hitting the boss. So that's like the number one thing for leaving damage on the table. If you can tighten that up, it will drastically improve things. But you also do need to be doing your rotation correctly, because if you're hitting the boss with full uptime, if you're hitting the wrong buttons, you're hitting the wrong buttons, right? You can have great uptime, but you can press all the wrong buttons and still do bad damage. So it's like two sides to the same coin. You got to really work on both of those things. I'm not going to get into how to do the rotation correctly for every single 21 job in every one of the 21 jobs in the game, right? Like that's just way too much beyond the scope of this video. Go to the Balance Discord, look at the openers, look at the 2-minute bursts, look at what you're supposed to be doing for the general rotation. And as long as you're doing that pretty consistently, you'll probably be doing a good job. It's pretty obvious when you make mistakes in this game, in my opinion. If, you know, you're familiar with the job you're playing, like you're going to know if you screw something up, right? For the most part, at least I do. Maybe that's me just playing this game too much. I know when you're starting out, it's kind of harder to recognize when you're screwing things up. One thing that's really worth looking at, like let's take this log, for example. I cleared with some friends in my old static this week, so I know I died in this fight as well. One thing I'm going to do is copy that URL and we will throw it into this website, xivanalysis.com, which actually gives you detailed breakdowns of the fight and shows you what you did wrong, what you could improve on. And this is huge. Definitely use this if you're not sure about what mistakes you might be making. Again, this was a very messy log where we had deaths. Things actually look okay, right? But I don't know. I know I was screwing some stuff up, but like you can come in here and you can look at like your buff windows and see like, did I get everything in these windows that I needed to? And you know, these look pretty decent. I thought things got screwed up because I died, but I must have kept things in alignment decently enough. You can come and see like, am I getting my potions? Am I getting, you know, the both uses of my potions? Am I fitting all the abilities under those potions that I need to be? Am I getting my positionals? I missed a couple. You can see the whole timeline of the fight. Like this is a super useful tool to take a look at. Oh, I double weaved here with Stardiver by accident at one point. 3.6 seconds between GCDs. That's good. So you can come in here and see your mistakes. This is going to look different for whatever job you're playing. It tells you some things, some suggestions on how you could improve. Don't die. Yeah, that's a classic. Avoid weaving more than you should. Like I said, I just had a double weave there. That was bad. Missed some GCDs under buff windows. I don't know if that was because I died or what, but you know, this will look different for whatever job you're playing, job specific abilities and suggestions, but XIV analysis can't recommend this one enough. If you're just trying to improve on your rotation, that website is blindingly bright. Let's get back off of that. So yeah, I would definitely recommend checking that. Another thing I would recommend checking if you are trying to analyze how you're playing, how you're performing, you can actually come in here. If you're looking at your log, you can go in and check the casts. So if you go to this tab called casts and then click on your name, you can actually see how many of each ability you cast throughout the fight. So you can take this information and compare it to other logs. Like for example, I know this is a little off screen here up in the top left, but if I go to Savage and sort by this same fight and go to rankings, we're going to open this up in a new tab. I can come in here, sort by damage and sort by my same job and see the top ranked players. I'm going to go to one of these North American ones so we can actually read the log. The Japanese ones are actually in Japanese. But so I'm on like the rank 4, rank 5, whatever it was, Dragoon. And we can come in here and go to casts, click on their name and compare these. This is going to be a little bit different because it actually, you know, it's based on the kill time. They had a 6.5 minute kill time. My fight here is 7.5 minutes. If I go to one of my better parses, it's probably a little faster, but keep that in mind when you're comparing it. You might want to look for a parse that is more in line with your kill time, but you can bounce between these two clears, yours and, you know, a similar kill time, high ranking log, and see if there's anything you're missing out on, right? Again, if their kill time's a lot faster, they're going to have fewer casts in general, but you can see if they're getting anything that you're not. Again, I could do a better job at matching these kill times to try to find something more in line with what I've got going on here, but this is a really good way to see like what you might be missing. This is really good for like, if you're playing healer, for example. If I go back to my page and look at my healer log, maybe that Sage Clear, for example, wherever that was, let me see real quick. So if I go into the Sage Clear, go to casts, I can actually see how many of each ability I'm casting. I can see how many GCD shields I did. I casted 15 GCD shields throughout this fight, which is probably way too many, because I know if I go and look at those top ranking logs, they're going to have 0 Eucrasian Prognosis casts. So it just, you know, That's not what you want to be doing in Party Finder, that's for sure. Again, healer parsing is a bit more of a balancing act. You want to be careful with it. A word of warning to you: if you are healing in Party Finder, you want to still play it safe to some degree. Save it for those parse parties. But you can check how many casts of your damage spell that you got. Dosis here, I cast it 150 times. It would be interesting to go back and see, compare it to a similar kill time and see what other people are doing. So that's just another way that you can really look at your rotation and see like how well you're actually performing on your job. And again, for healers, for tanks, you can see your mitigations as well. Like, did I get enough uses of Panheima in this fight? I used it 3 times, so that's good. This is not a long fight. At most, I could have gotten 4. There's probably just not 4 places to put it throughout the fight. Maybe there is, I don't know. But, sometimes you want to save it for those big hits. So there's all sorts of good stuff in these logs that you can look at in that regard. Like, you can look and see if you're maybe underutilizing some of your abilities. Like, I only used Pneuma twice. I could have probably used that more often. There's a bunch of examples. This was my first ever Sage clear. I don't know what I'm doing on this job, so it's not going to look perfect. There's still a lot I can improve on there, but it's good to like look at that stuff and find what I'm missing, right? That's what these logs are for. And it's interesting to look at the healing parses as well, because you can just sort by healing, and same deal. Like, I've got a bunch of 99 parses on Machinist. Apparently I know how to use my Machinist mitigations well. My second wind, like, I'm fighting for my life out there on Machinist apparently. But you can actually come in here and see like how well did I do. That 1 on Astro, that's good. Hey, I got an 80 on Astro though, so it's not all bad. Like, I know how to heal on Astro. I'm telling you, I just didn't need to in that party. The Sage was just shielding everything and I was feeling real comfy. I think there was like 1 raid wide that almost killed us, but again, I'm not a healer, so yeah, I don't know. It's just fun to look at this stuff. It's fun to improve. The next thing outside of improving your rotation, because that's like the biggest thing, right? You want to do your rotation perfectly. A lot of the time, once you learn how to keep uptime, once you learn how, the gearing works, once you get geared, I should say, once you're geared, once you know how to keep uptime, it's like really like how well can you execute your rotation. But beyond that, we start getting into the finer details of parsing a little bit. And we start looking at things like kill time. So here, this is a really good example. This was my 99 parse, which again, could have been much better for multiple reasons. We had kind of a weird kill time on this one where we killed at 6 minutes and 55 seconds. So you can see this graph here is the damage profile. You can actually see these hills and valleys. You can see like this is a 2-minute burst. This is a 1-minute burst. Here, if I sort by myself, you can actually see my exact damage profile. So you can see every even and odd minute burst throughout the fight. And the way that the DPS works is that you want to end the fight right after your 2-minute optimally. So in a perfect world, we would kill the fight like right here, right at like 6.5 minutes, 6:25, 6:27, 6:30, somewhere around there. But we went on to kill the fight at like 6:53 or 6:55 is the recorded time. So we had a bunch of like dead space here where we're not really doing much. We're just doing like our filler GCD combos here. And when this is happening, your DPS just slowly starts to drop off. So like, for example, I did 28,508 damage with our real kill time. However, if we had managed to kill the boss at that like let's say 6:29 mark, my DPS will improve. See here now it's 29,000, which is a slight improvement, 500 DPS gain if we had killed the boss, 30 seconds sooner, which would improve my parse, right? There's some more extreme examples of this. Like, this isn't the end of the world. Like, we kind of trailed off here at the end, but we still got our whole burst in. Sometimes there will be fights where like you kill at a horrible time, where you do your 2-minute burst, you do your 1-minute burst, you're in this like dead zone, and then you kill the boss like right here. Obviously, this is not a real kill time for this fight, but like just as an example, in like a longer fight, maybe you kill right before your 2 minutes are coming up. And that is like the worst time that you could kill, because you've got all of this dead space where you've just been kind of noodling around, hitting the boss. You do your 1-minute burst, sure. But like, this is like the most time that you can go without doing your maximum damage. Like after your 2-minute and then leading into your next 2-minute. Like if you kill the boss right here, you're not going to have a good parse no matter what you do, right? You basically need to kill right after your 2 minutes to get an optimal parse in this game. It's just the way it works. It's just the way the damage profiles work. And that will give you the highest overall DPS average for the whole fight if you end on this kill time, like right after a 2 minute. So that's what you want to be shooting for. This isn't like a huge make it or break it type of thing. Like, again, I'm still sitting at like a 97 today, even with this kind of weird, not so good kill time. I even ended up pressing limit break at the end because I was just sitting there like not doing anything. And I'm like, oh, I'm just hitting my GCD. Let's just try to end this fight. And, you know, I'll LB and hopefully end it shortly or even sooner rather than, you know, sitting here not doing a burst. So I don't know if that helped or hurt me, but, you know, it still worked out. I still got a 99 at the time, but that's not an optimal thing, right? Like with this party, we had a machinist, we had a warrior, we had a paladin. Like, I don't know, if we had maybe a bard, a gunbreaker, and a dark knight, which, you know, that would put us in a pretty meta comp. Maybe we swap out the monk for a samurai just to squeak out that bit more of damage. Ideally, they swap me out for a samurai, right? I could have played samurai even on my alt. But, you know, a couple little tweaks here and there, and we could have shortened up that kill time. We could have had more high damaging jobs that do more damage into our party buffs, which is another thing with parsing. Like for me on Dragoon, I play an RDPS job, which basically accounts for other people doing damage into my raid buff, which affects my parse. So I need, you know, the highest damaging jobs in the game to get like that super high end top ranking, right? This is getting into like really high end stuff, and you don't need to worry about this if you're just trying to improve your parse, but that's stuff that that becomes an issue once you get to this high level, where like I need that meta comp to improve at this point. Like I feel like I played pretty well. There's some optimizations I could make for sure. There's some things that I don't do that, you know, are minor optimizations, but like, you know, if we had a slightly higher damaging party, maybe we fix that kill time a bit. Maybe my parse goes up even more. Maybe everybody else's does too. And you do get into the weeds a bit with that sort of thing where it's like, okay, like how much of this really matters? How much of it is just like gimmicky, like party optimization, like meta party comps, and you know, that stuff's the kind of thing that's not super fun in my opinion, but it does affect your parse. And you know, if you have a bad kill time, bringing it back to that, you know, that's going to do a lot more than, you know, having the right jobs in your party. So there's all sorts of different things that you need to look out for. Kill time is super important though, because again, if you're like killing right before your 2 minute burst, if you do your 2 minute burst and kill like right before your 1 minute burst, that's pretty bad too. You know, anywhere that's like in between these really big peaks, it's just going to hurt your overall damage numbers quite a lot. So that's one thing to look out for too. If you feel like you played really well, but like you didn't get a great parse, check that out, because if you got a bad kill time, that will have a pretty big impact on your parse. Going beyond that, there is a lot more. Like I mentioned, some of this stuff with the meta team comps. There are also a lot of job-based optimizations that I cannot get into in this video. I don't know all of them, let alone the ones for Dragoon. I haven't spent enough time on my main job to like know every last optimization. I'm not even going to try to touch that stuff. I basically just do the standard bare bones rotation. Try to do your burst, try to fit all your stuff into your burst, and try to keep full uptime. And you can do very well. You can get these higher parses, right? Like if you just do your rotation correctly, keep uptime, and play well, and have a party who's also playing well, then you can do very solidly, in my opinion. Like it's like those minor optimizations are trying to take it to the next level to get those 99s, to get those like super high ranks, like those top 100 ranks, those rank ones even. Like that's when you really need to start squeaking out the damage at every opportunity you can. Because this stuff gets pretty tedious at this level, and doing it in Party Finder without any communication with random players, you never know what you're going to get. You might have to wait like an hour to get into these parties sometimes. They're pretty popular these days, but like just not knowing what you're going to get with your party, if they're going to be great players or not, it's always hard to say. It's kind of luck of the draw. This stuff is just a little too tedious for me personally. I don't really, I don't want to invest the time. I think it's really impressive what people do with that high-end parsing stuff, but I don't know. I just jump into some Party Finder groups once in a while and see where we end up, right? There's a ton more optimization that you can be making that you will learn along the way. A lot of these people in these parties are super nice and friendly and helpful. They want you to do well because it helps them do well. And they will happily give you some advice if you need it. Or they'll angrily give you some advice if you're blatantly making a bunch of mistakes. I don't know. It's, again, I haven't spent enough time in there, but parsing can be stressful. There is the question of when do I jump into these parse parties, right? I think there's a balance that needs to be struck when it comes to finding your way into these groups. Like you need to be practiced enough and kind of build up to it, right? You can't just jump into these high-end parties. A lot of the time in Party Finder, you'll see these parties where they'll say parse party 95 plus, and that refers to these parses. It assumes that you have at least a 95 already to join that party, right? Sometimes you'll see 90 plus, sometimes you won't see anything. Then it's kind of free reign, right? You can just jump in there. But, people will put in the Party Finder, like, we want you to know what you're doing. That's because they're going for those high ranks. They're going for those good parses, and it requires everybody in the party to play super well, to play optimally, to play meta jobs. Another thing that's even apparent this raid tier and previous raid tiers is what's called sandbagging. That's a whole other topic, but I think that's only relevant in M2, this raid tier. And sandbagging is basically when somebody in the party deliberately does very little damage to basically fix the kill time. So I was in a parse party. We didn't do this, but we had two people who died, which is effectively the same thing, right? So people will sandbag. This is not that. This is just a random parse party that I joined. It ended up not being so great, but somebody got a 99, so it worked out for them. But we ended up with a good kill time because people died. But if everybody in this party was playing super well, again, we would end up with a really weird kill time. And that's where the sandbagging comes in. A lot of the times, one of the DPS will sit there and purposely do little damage until their 2-minute burst where they, do their full burst to play into everybody's party buffs. And it gets a little wacky. Like that's like not super fun in my opinion. Because at that point you're like really trying to kind of cheat the system and like pull off some weird optimization that's like, you're not really playing the game at that point. If you're like sitting there doing your AoE rotation until it's time to do your burst, right? Just to like affect the kill time. Like, it's a little weird, but you know, it's cool. It's cool that you can do that stuff. Not throwing shade at the people who do that. It's just, at the super high level, you're competing against weird strategies like that people have. And you're like not going to run into that in Party Finder, right? Like that's dedicated parse groups who are trying to like fully and thoroughly optimize every last thing in a fight. So I don't know. Back to the question of like, when do you join these parties? I think you need to spend some time in Party Finder. Like I have here, you just got to get the reps in. You got to get comfortable. First and foremost, you need to be consistent with the mechanics in the fight before anything, because those parse parties, like if you're dying, if you're wiping the party's just going to blow up. Like nobody wants to deal with that when they're trying to get a good run. If you screw up their good run, they're not going to be happy. So you need to be consistent with the fight first. And in my opinion, you should be pretty comfortably pumping out like purples in just whatever random clear parties in Party Finder before you start jumping into parse parties. Like a lot of these purples here are just whatever random weekly reclears, clear for ones, any chest reclears that I'll just jump into for fun, for practice. Like I highly recommend you do that before you start jumping into dedicated parse parties. It's just a really good way to get practice in, to improve. Not all of these will go to plan. A lot of the times, like, you're not going to be parsing in those re-clears, those any chest clears, those clear for one parties, but like you should still be able to squeeze out purples if you're geared, if you're playing well. That's a really good spot to just go in and practice your rotation, practice keeping uptime, and try to improve on a personal level before you start worrying about any of that like high level parsing stuff. When it comes to like the more hardcore end of things, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to it when it comes to that stuff. It's a really interesting way to go about playing the game, I guess. I don't really know. I've spent a lot of time. I personally have been having more fun going in and learning different jobs, different roles. I've done some healer clears. I've been learning tank a little bit. This week on stream, I'm going to be trying to re-clear the whole raid tier on tank for the first time. So I think it'll go fine. I've joined some prog parties just to like get my feet wet on tank, but I'll be jumping into that on stream on Tuesday, I think. So that should be really fun. Come by and hang out and watch me die to tank busters if you want. Or forget to put my tank stance on and kill DPS with the tank busters, whatever it might be. It's going to be interesting though. But point being, I've been having more fun learning new jobs because like I know that if I spent the time to grind out the optimization in these parse parties, like I could probably have 99s across the board. Like I feel confident in my abilities to do that, like to the point where I don't feel the need to actually go out and do it. Maybe that's cope. I don't know. Like, put your money where your mouth is, right? But like, I don't know. I'm not worried about it. Like I could probably go out and get a bunch of oranges at least, maybe if not pinks. I'm not saying I can go out and rank 1 every fight. Like that's, I don't know. There's more work in this than I'm leading on, but I feel like I play consistently enough on Dragoon where to me personally, it's more interesting to go and try to just learn new jobs, try to learn new roles. I think there's a different skill set between the two when it comes to parsing and learning different jobs and roles. Both are really good to do. Parsing's fun and, valuable at that high level because it really does teach you how to optimize things, how to move things around in an interesting way that you might need to do in different scenarios, like in Ultimate or other things when it comes to like doing your burst in different ways or like holding for different phases, whatever that might be. Parsing can teach you some of that stuff and get you more familiar with that side of things. Where like normal savage clears, like you're just doing your rotation on a striking dummy a lot of the times, but high-end parsing can actually have some slight variation in there sometimes. And I don't know, it just gets a little bit more interesting, but on the opposite side, like when you're learning different jobs, learning different roles, there's also just a lot to be learned from that as well. It teaches you how like the different jobs move around, how like they want to do their movement, how they want to position. Like, you know, playing healer teaches you the importance of party mitt a lot more so than playing like a melee DPS does. Same thing with tank, like learning how to move and position the boss. All of that stuff makes you a better player as a whole. In a similar way to how parsing on like one singular job makes you a better player as a whole. Because I feel like if you can optimize one job, a lot of the jobs play very similarly in this game, at least when it comes to the fundamentals of doing your rotation, doing your burst, doing your filler, you know, doing your opener, aligning your buffs, keeping uptime. Once you learn those things, you can kind of play any job in this game pretty well, right? Like, I was able to hop on my alt this week. My alt's parses are not quite as good, but mainly because I've been learning just whatever random job I want on this character, right? Like I learned Samurai for the first time this tier. I've been learning Monk. This week I cleared on Pictomancer. And again, this is a case of me not having great gear. I think I'm like item level 723 or something with a tome weapon. And outside of that, I don't have much tome gear at all. So these are not great. But like going back to my point, I was able to hop on Picto. And because I know the fundamentals, I quickly learned the Picto rotation, the Picto burst, the opener, whatever. I was able to come in here and do very well playing this raid tier because I've practiced other jobs enough, because I've practiced on Dragoon and Ninja enough. It's like a lot of those same skills transfer over. Obviously, Picto's a caster. It's got to paint all its motifs. It's like a totally different job. It couldn't have more of a different play style, but all the fundamentals are there. This is all stuff that you learn from parsing and trying to improve and optimize like a single job even. A lot of those same fundamentals will carry over to whatever job you're playing, right? So I don't know. You can learn new jobs. You can learn the same job and just practice it and try to parse and improve on it. All of this stuff makes you a better player, right? That's kind of the bottom line. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that looking at this stuff and paying attention to this stuff is all super important. Trying to improve with all this stuff is important. My alt looks very messy because I didn't have a lot of gear. I was swapping a monk, playing with an EX weapon for a while as well, but I don't know. I was just having fun on this character. This one is a little less polished, but this was just like my for fun character that, you know, I've been doing re-clears on. So, you know, still some good numbers on there. I got like a 90 on monk this past week. A week ago, whenever it was, last week. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot that goes into this stuff. Ultimately, these numbers don't really matter. It's really just for your personal benefit and improvement. You can look at how you're doing week after week. You can look at how you compare to other people, try to improve, see what they're doing, see what you could be doing differently, see if you're missing anything. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully this stuff helped you out. If you've got any questions about any of this stuff, feel free to hop in our Discord server. There will be a link to that down in the description. Always happy to look at your logs and see if anything stands out to me about where you might be able to improve. I'm no expert on every last job in the game, but you know, I play a bunch of them, have a good idea of how many of them work. And as you see, for better or worse, sometimes it goes to plan, sometimes it doesn't, but you know, it's always fun nonetheless. Hopefully this helped you out. I don't know. I think that's going to be about it for me and parsing. Again, it's not really my cup of tea, but it's fun once in a while, and it's fun to look at these logs at the least. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think about parsing in 14. If you really grind it out, let me know how that's been going for you, how Party Finder's been for that. I think if I were to do that stuff in any serious capacity, I would be looking for a more dedicated group to do it with. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I start playing a job that doesn't rely on the party so much like Dragoon and some of the other raid buff jobs do. because again, you got to hope that everybody's doing damage into your buffs, and that can be less than fun sometimes in my opinion, but I don't know. So it is what it is. This stuff ultimately doesn't matter. Just play the game, try to improve, and your numbers will probably go up over time. The more you practice, the more you play. So just have fun with it. That's all I can say. That's all I really try to do. And after a couple years of playing this, Raiden Savage Ultimate, it's been easier than ever to get decent parses this tier. So I don't know. Just goes to show if you keep at it, you'll get there. And yeah, I don't know. That'll do it for me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this helped you out. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one. Peace.